Hello and welcome to Hack 5. My name is Darren Kitchen and I am so excited because today we are live tickling some techno lust with none other than my boy MG and
Hey.
and MG. Dude, it's good to see you.
What's up, man? Good to be back again.
Likewise, happy hacker prom.
Hacker prom. Oh my God.
Well, I just feel like, given the whole state of affairs, like Black Hat and DEF CON and virtual, and here we are doing our own thing. And it's just like a wonderful time to be a hacker. I feel really, it's always August every year. I feel bad for the normies that are checking the news, reading their like Ars Technica and all the other stuff that like makes its way up into the mainstream, and they're like, oh my God, the world is like, the sky is falling. Why does everything get hacked in August?
It's a good time to hack.
All right. Yeah, well, so give me a rundown. Give me an idea of what we are getting into today, because I know a lot of folks are in the YouTube chat. We're going to be talking with you guys today. Thank you for joining us. I know that, Mind Control and Calculator, Ramen, and Edgar J, and so many others have been keen for this particular hangout because, OMG, do you have a cast of characters to join us and a bunch to go through? So give me a taste of what we're going to be getting to in the next hour or so.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've done very little info sharing. It's just kind of like this, from the first time we hung out in DEF CON, what was that, 2 years ago now? You're looping back there. Feedback. Anyway, everything's been kind of like, side menu, you got to know to ask and that type of thing. So, man, let's see. First of all, I brought a bunch of the team with. So I'm going to introduce all of you real quick. If you can make some noise so that you pop on screen. So I've got Kalani here.
Hello.
I've got Wasabi.
Woo! Hey. That's all I can.
And I have Sig here.
Hey.
There we go. There's a bunch more of the dev team, but this is who we brought with today. And God, let's see. We want to kind of update everybody about kind of what we've been doing over the last year and a half. Tell you, if you don't know anything about our stuff, what it is, and maybe a little bit about where we're going and a new little device we wanted to release during DEF CON. So let's see, how should we kick this off? So I guess let's talk about what OMG is, right? So this goes back about 2.5 years ago now, where I in my garage here with this machine prototyped the very basic PCBs, which I have here conveniently. For example, oh God, this is not going to work. There we go.
Nice.
Tiny little PCBs. I got a whole bunch of them anyway. Here's a better one. Little tiny PCBs that go into USB connectors. The idea was I wanted to copy this cable exactly, right? And well, we did it. Let me open a brand new one here. It's got some blue tape on it, protective tape. And what is this? So it's a visual replica of that cable I just showed you, which is a very popular cable. It's a malicious cable, right? So it's the first third-party product to license Ducky script as well, which kind of gets to the point here. We are able to deliver payloads wirelessly into the cable, out into the host. It acts like a cable. And, that was the basic concept of it. When I released it about 2.5, 3 years ago, I just wanted to get it out in the world, see who liked it, and suddenly I got this team, as I brought along with today, that wanted to help make this better. And, well, we have. The firmware has been advanced significantly over the last year and a half. The hardware has continued to advance. There's a lot of really cool stuff that I would like to kind of cover here. So it's kind of the intro where we're going.
Yeah, and for anybody that is hearing that and is like, okay, for like the one person that's like, wait, what makes it malicious? The keystroke injection attack, as it were, is essentially a very simple violation of the man-human trust relationship, where computers inherently trust humans and humans speak to computers via keyboards. And so if you show up to a computer and say, hey, I'm a keyboard, it's going to say, cool, give me some keystrokes. And essentially you can macrotize or automate anything that you can as a human do sitting in front of a computer, except because it's a computer that's been programmed to emulate a human, it can do it at superhuman speeds. So while you may be able to type 100 words a minute, something that does keystroke injection, like the original USB rubber ducky that invented the concept, or MG's line of cables and other malicious gadgets, is able to do exactly that. And what's beautiful about it is because it's in the form factor of a cable, something that is so innocuous and so we're used to it for file transfers and charging, that you got a bunch of these in your drawers. In fact, put 2 of them in your drawers, wait a couple days, come back, you got 3 or 4. People don't think the wiser, and so that's what makes it malicious. And it's so wonderful to have partnered with MG and his crew to see how they're able to take Ducky's script and evolve it and just adapt it into so many wonderful new forms.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm looking at the chat, and it sounds like there's probably some value in going a little further back to the first time I was on Hack 5, which is man, what was that, 2018? I think. Anyway, you can go check out those episodes. I think it was exploding USB drives was the initial episode. And yeah, I just happen to have that right here. So the idea I had way back in the day was to basically, emulate a really primitive ducky, but also have it explode. And let's see if you can see it. There's a really tiny kind of implant on there that was required to make space for the other portion of that attack. And once I had done that, well, I realized I had a really tiny, like very primitive ducky that, well, I could start hiding in other things. And the very first thing I did was hide it in this little cable boot, right? So that was the very first cable I could make. And I think that was like 2017, 2018 that I did that. Eventually I wanted to improve that by adding way more power, making it wireless and all those other things. And at the time, nobody had put this into a cable that I know of other than the NSA. Which, we're getting there, right? Let's see. So, okay, what happened after the Type A, though? So the obvious thing is, the world is evolving, and everybody's starting to use Type C, right? Much smaller connector. Let's actually just open this up for a comparison, right? So first of all, going from this guy to this one was a significant jump in terms of reducing the size. Then going from, come on, focus, this to this required even more size reduction. But basically what we had been doing is, from the initial batch of sales, took all that money, threw it back into R&D just to see how much further we could push things. And eventually, yeah, that's exactly what happened. And I think it was, a couple of months ago, 3 months? I've lost track of time over the last year and a half, like many of you probably have. But, focus again. So here is the OMG cable. And here is the not OMG cable. The sizes.
That's incredible. Yeah,
sizes
millimeter to millimeter. Right? I don't think you're even, I don't know if it's going to come across on stream, but you can look at the high-res photos, and more importantly, I can tell you from my experience, interacting with MG and with the manufacturers and down to all of the people that are involved in ensuring that the cable is as identical to the original as possible. MG is relentless when it comes to ensuring that like every minute detail is considered, and to just such an extent where, honestly, dude, you could have had this thing out like 6 months prior, 9 months prior, but that attention to detail really shines too, because all the time, like I have to leave the blue thing on, and I'm terrified because I don't actually remember. And I can't tell you how many times thankfully only done things like charge my AirPods, but definitely charge my AirPods with a malicious cable.
Yeah, it's funny. Like that cable I was showing you here, it's got the end of the blue protective tape on it. Some of them do, some of them don't. Depends on the exact batch. But I noticed people started leaving that tape on there, which is why I started. Do I have any here? 3D printing these little orange tags so that people could leave them on the cables and not leave the tape on them, which is kind of funny. And you're right. Like this got delayed many months over like 0.3 millimeters of size difference. And I'm like, no, it's got to be exactly where it goes. So besides the hardware, there's a lot of firmware stuff we've been doing. So we are right on the edge of like officially releasing our V2 firmware. So the community has been helping us test this a lot. And it's really, it's so much better than V1 at this point. Like it's faster. I think it's like 4 or 5 times faster in terms of the payload speed. The wireless is always on. The consistency and accuracy of the payloads is so much like there's a lot going on. We also added keylogger functionality. So again, with changing times, you might notice keyboards like this. You think they're Bluetooth, right? And they are, but they have to be charged. This one over a lightning to, USB connector of your choice. And when it does that, it is now a standard USB keyboard.
Dude,
so
I was so surprised when you
that
pointed that out to me because, just from like a manufacturing perspective, I'm like, why complicate the matters? Why, if this thing is already wireless, then why make the charger anything more than just a simple LiPo charger? And yet it shows up as a standard HID keyboard, which benefits us on the red team side and is just like, I want to know, I really am so curious, what was behind that design decision? Is it something like, oh, well, we need the keyboard to be able to work like at boot when you like hold down whatever it is, shift and control and command and all the other option keys and stuff on a Mac? Or like, and that wouldn't happen wirelessly or what?
Actually,
but it doesn't matter because it shows up as a HID keyboard.
I actually have some history on that. So the Bluetooth will transmit and be accessible as a boot device. However, within military and government, people don't like wireless for obvious reasons because somebody can snoop on it. So Apple went in and made this change where everything can function over wired simply so that they could sell through into those government markets and pass the certifications needed.
That's brilliant. It's kind of like early in the days of like camera phones when you would have the option to get a BlackBerry without a camera.
Yeah, just like that.
Right.
That's hilarious too, because it's in places like a skiff where, you're concerned about RF and that leakage and things of that nature. And yet it's a design. I get the design decision, but in this case, it actually makes the whole system slightly less vulnerable or slightly more vulnerable. In this case, as I'm sure OMG will demonstrate.
Well, it depends on your threat model, but yes, in the case of the OMG cable, it's certainly an opportunity for us. In Apple's case, they have a cool, just like it automatically pairs when you plug it in thing. And there's a lot of other keyboards that do this, a lot of premium keyboards. And the idea of a detachable cable means you can replace that cable, you can change its size, you can change what connectors on the other end. So there's more and more of these types of keyboards out there, whether they're Bluetooth or not Bluetooth. So the attack surface, kind of changed, and it's a greater opportunity for the cable. Now, keylogging for USB is, it's not new. There's been many attempts at that, whether it's, software or hardware, that goes in the loop. The unique thing that we specifically designed it for is keyboards with detachable cables, because then there is no visual like evidence that your keylogger is in the loop, and it takes a second to deploy. That's another thing in this V2 firmware. If you've got the keylogger model, that we've enabled there. Some other cool stuff, which is in a recent Hack 5 episode where Darren and I went down onto the streets of Oakland to test this out, is these Type-C cables have a significantly more optimized antenna, and we've combined it with these geofencing triggers that allow some really cool autonomous capabilities. So if you see a network or you don't see a network, you can trigger behavior. You can trigger payloads. You can trigger our self-destruct. You can block payloads. So, the classic thing that in the new Bash Bunny that Darren did an entire stream on is the great example of where Jason Street, robbed the wrong bank, right? And that was a great example of like, well, this would block that if you're not in range of the right, bank in this case. Lots of really cool things you can do. You can, make the cable behave as a normal cable up until your target carries it physically into the office space. Then it'll run the payload only because it's, on site. And then after that first payload, you can say, hey, self-destruct, wipe all evidence, go back to a normal cable state permanently. And I say permanently because once you physically retrieve the cable, you can reflash it. So for anybody who hasn't played around with that, feel free to, run self-destruct. It's not going to permanently break the cable.
I absolutely love the self-destruct feature. And, for anybody feeling adventurous, also you could hack the wrong bank if you really want to.
You can do anything you want. What else should we get into? So that touches on a lot of the V2 stuff we're doing. We're not done with the V2. This is just a continual polish that we're doing. When we released V1, it was kind of like a minimum viable product. Get it out, see who liked it, see what they're doing with it. Turns out a whole lot of people like it, and they're doing a lot of things with it. So we constantly get customer feedback of things that would be, can we improve this? Can we add this feature? Lots of stuff like that, right? And before I jump into the next steps, I think this is probably a really good time to announce the little thing that I threw together, which is what we're calling the OMG plug right now.
Are you just dropping a new product right now?
Yeah, we're just going to drop the product. So this, I'll give you the URL in a second. There's an extremely small amount of these. My intent was to bring basically we have 3 dozen of them. I hand built them all entirely from scratch down to like a novel laser engraving technique that embeds this red pigment into the ABS plastic. The idea was to hand them out.
Wait, that's not you with a Sharpie.
No.
That's amazing.
Let me see if I can get closer.
Dude, it looks great.
Yeah, it's. I wish I had a little bit better lighting.
Hey, can I get a better look at your keys? Can you just hold your keys up for a moment? I just want to see the ridges on them for a moment.
Yep. Yeah, please don't copy those.
Oh, okay.
Definitely don't copy those.
Yeah.
Everybody got a screenshot real quick? Okay.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay. So what happened is we noticed that we accidentally built something really cool when we built the OMG firmware, which is when you want to use DuckyScript, you type it up in a web browser. So these cables all work by either creating a wireless access point or attaching to a wireless network, and then use any device, whether it's a mobile device or desktop, whatever it may be, use a web browser to connect up to it, and then all the controls happen in that web UI, right? So you type the DuckyScript, you hit go. That's it. That's all it takes. And it's like a second if you want to iterate. And oh, I made a typo. Oh, I need a little bit more delay between these DuckyScript commands. You just edit it, hit go. And I started noticing that a lot of people were looking to this as like a entry level, like let's learn how to do DuckyScript really quickly because you can iterate really fast. I had a couple people in your Hack5 Discord saying, hey, can I just cut the cable off of one of these? I'm like, but why? And then, I'm like, wait a second. Why don't we just, the idea of the plug was kind of already in my mind before then. And Darren, I'm going to fully give you a lot of credit on this one. You were even encouraging me to do it.
Well, I mean, I told you straight up, give the people what they want. They've been asking for this. So just why not? And honestly, it's because I want one. I mean, I selfishly do this all the time. This is, a perfect example would be like the Shark Jack, right? I don't know how well that's not going to come out. But this is the example of, a tool that I wanted when I worked in systems administration. So now that we make, hacker gadgets, why not make it? And in the same case, this is very much something where when you showed me the OMG cable the very first time and connected to it over your phone, I'm like, oh, I want that on my keychain because I'm just tactical with my keychains and I want a lot of gadgets on them. and I also like to hack stuff.
It would turn out you're really good at knowing what people want. So yeah, that's the basic concept here. And what we're doing is releasing a really small batch just to see what people do with it, right? Like where are they going to go with this? Like, is this a good tool? Does it need to be modified? Like, I don't know. We have not started the production process for creating more of these. I want some feedback from the public and just the whole user base to tell me, what would this be better without the little red logo on there? All kinds of things, right? And of course, there's the manufacturing process of figuring out how it can be manufactured, because I am not doing these all in my garage. It's the same loop over and over for me. But
are you sure? Because I feel like I want the bespoke. I want the MG one. I want the one that's been blessed by your little soft hands. Actually, for everybody watching, they're all blessed by MG's little soft hands, and it's because everything gets flashed and provisioned and QA'd and tested literally in his living room. If you've watched some of our previous streams, you'll know.
I mean, when MG works on these projects, it's amazing during the development process when he goes through and there'll be like a millimeter off center or something just tiny that you can't even notice in the picture. And he's like, this whole batch is done. We can't use this. And he'll go through major revisions. When you get a cable, it is going to be the most perfect cable that can possibly be made. And it's always amazing seeing him go through that process in the development discussions. But it is fun.
He's not pedantic. He's just a hacker perfectionist, a craftsman.
Oh, I love it. I do test every single OMG cable. So while a large portion of that I have outsourced, they are still hand assembling huge portions of that. And ultimately, they do all come into my lap, and I am manually testing each and every one before it goes out. I'm sealing every single envelope and packing them. So if you get an extra sticker in there or something, I'm sorry. Anyway, so the idea is the plug is like a more entry level. No, it still does everything. It uses the exact same hardware as the OMG cable. We've just taken out a couple of features that don't make sense, like USB pass-through control, because it's not a cable, right? Things like self-destruct, because a lot of people probably don't want to be self-destructing a thing they've got on their keychain at all times, But who knows? We can change everything on the fly. That's kind of the point of this. And if you want to get your hands on one, I got a URL redirector to a kind of secret Hack5 store link. It's o.mg.lol/plug, all lowercase, plug. So we'll see how many are left at the end of the stream, and maybe I'll post that on Twitter. Otherwise, congrats, you got them all.
And I'm going to say on a logistical note, thanks, Mike. Thanks, MG. Does look great. I'm going to synchronize that inventory count so that the very few of them that you have are actually available. But hang tight for a little later in the stream for your chance to nab one of the few handmade units.
Yes. This is how we usually do it. It's like Darren and I just making stuff go like seconds before it needs to go. It's great. I love it.
I told you the warehouse was going to need a little while to sync that, but that's okay. No, you did the right thing by doing the hold, but draft would have. We're all good. Now we're inside baseball.
No worries.
It doesn't matter. But give me like 30 seconds, and I'm gonna hack some inventory.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, we can let you know when it's in stock stream. You will need, so these ship with firmware already on them, but to update the firmware, do any debugging, you're going to need one of the OMG Cable programmers. So make sure you add one to your cart if you don't already have one. Any of them will work. But yeah, Darren will let us know when it's up on the store, and you can all go grab them. Sorry, Darren.
It's up. It's just waiting to cache. Or
Okay.
It's just a caching thing right now.
Everyone F5. And
Command Shift or Control Shift F5. It's live. There you go.
Nice. Well, there they are. We'll see what's left in the store. But this is a perfect time because Kalani just rejoined the stream. Are you ready, Kalani?
Wait. Can I real quick?
I need about 30 seconds.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Perfect.
Okay, well, Kalani gets himself set up. I just want to take the opportunity to thank everybody for joining in the live stream. This is so much fun to be able to do with you guys, and I just want to give back for all of the community support. And so for everybody listening who wants a $100 Hack5 gift card to be able to get anything from us and MG, including the new OMG plug prototype, you can use this gift card. So, but this is only for one of you. So I'm going to choose PokeBear. Okay, everybody that's not PokeBear on the stream, go ahead and mute because this gift card isn't for you. But dude, PokeBar, what you want to do in checkout is use this coupon slash gift card code. It's Echo 59 Hotel 229 576 825 Alpha 76, and that's $100 just for you. Okay, everybody else can unmute now. We're good.
Did you get that, Pookie?
I'm hoping so. I'm hoping so.
Okay, so this is a good time to lead into like what we're doing next and kind of like in the immediate future. So there's a few things we're working on. The plug kind of leads into this direction of ease of use, ease of, testing out Ducky script and learning how to use it. So Kalani is setting up some screen sharing, kind of the V2 firmware web UI, and we'll kind of show you a few things that we are experimenting with. We're currently just calling it like 2.5 because we don't plan that far out. But you ready to go, Kalani? If you want to show off some of this.
And
Yeah,
also,
I'm ready to go.
A quick programming note for Kalani as well, just to keep in mind that the stream does crop in about 10% on all sides for your interface. So if you could put it in a smaller window, it'll probably show up a lot better on the live stream. And of course, everybody on the chat, you just let us know if you're able to see that all good. Because honestly, I'm very excited to see this. I haven't seen this, so I'm with you guys.
All right.
And then make that text nice and big if you can.
We'll make that a little bigger. Okay.
Nice.
All right. Well, first things first, here is V2. So the release that we've just made available for all of our past keyloggers, cables, and the current stuff as well. So the nice thing about this is it is now a unified firmware, which means that this one piece of code runs on all of our devices, and it comes down to whether or not the hardware has the capabilities to use it and whether or not you'll get things like a keylogger or if you're just limited to payloads. One of the important things that we wanted to do from the very beginning is to make sure that everything you really need in order to run a payload exists right here inside of this web UI, because sometimes all you have is your phone and you're out in the field and need to change something. So we have incorporated a help system into here that includes the full Ducky script syntax and examples of how to use it. We have also expanded dramatically on the number of languages that are included in DuckyLang. I believe we're now at 35 languages, including ones like Russian and Arabic, which are non-Cyrillic or non-Latin. One of them is Cyrillic, as well as some right-to-left languages, which means that we can start tackling a lot of the more fun and interesting languages anytime that there's an interest. Right now, what you can do is you can look through here to see any particular commands that you want, highlight something, and copy and paste it into the payload. So like if you wanted to have a wait for not present, so one of the geofencing payloads that would make sure that you're not robbing the wrong bank, you just come over here, you paste that in, and then you change the network name to whatever you don't want this payload to run as. So like we'll say my home. At which point then you just start writing the rest of your payload, which you can copy out from help or just write straight in here. So we'll go strength is test, enter. No, we'll throw some fun stuff in here. So GUI, R, Notepad, and then take these, take those, and at which point then you can come right over here, click this, and it will attempt to run, assuming, of course, that I can actually type correctly. So we'll just do a quick, I'm not. All right. So when you are ready to run, you'll just come over and click the run button. We also have a sample of default payloads, which you can grab from here and run them against your target, as well as, if you wanted to, save up to, well, 7 slots as well as a boot slot, so that you can have things pre-configured and ready to go on the fly for whatever situation you find yourself in. Just come over here. You can save it to that slot or press run and it executes on that host. But one of the other nice things that we've mentioned here is the Keylogger functionality. The Keylogger allows you to watch everything user types on that keyboard. So I'll swap back over onto my webcam for a second so you guys can see. So what we have here is our cable plugged in directly to the keyboard so that we can see what's going on. And then we can log any of the key presses on here directly into that web browser session as well as into Flash so that we can query it again. So we'll just come over here and type. And what you see here is that we are writing out the modifiers that are being pressed with a sort of an on and off syntax, the key that was being held down during that modifier, and then whatever string was being typed. But you can also do more complex things as well. So like if you did Control-Alt-A, that one also shows up, as well as if somebody was doing remapping of like their function keys to something else in the back end. We can catch all of that sort of stuff as well and allow you to read through it and see what's going on. As well as our keylogger stores a ton of text. I believe it's 66,000 characters, or is that wrong, MG?
600, I think we're at 650,000 keystrokes right now, roughly.
Wow,
yeah.
that's,
So
that's
it's
even more
a lot.
than 640K, and I thought 640K was enough for anyone.
And for the record, a lot of, like, this whole logging, I don't know, syntax, I guess, is basically I don't know what, I guess created by Darren and the what is it? The Keystroke. Sorry, I'm failing to think right now.
So I can't take credit for it. That is our boy Corbin. That is the developer of the Keystroke, which also does key logging, and we had to come up with a mechanism and a language to represent what's actually happening. Because as it turns out, your keyboard, while all of the letters may be capital on it, there's no such thing as capital A on your keyboard. You hit A, it sends the scan codes 0002. The first 00s being whether or not there's a modifier key of shift. So for you to send a capital A, you're hitting shift A. And then actually, there's more than one shift, as it turns out. You got the left side shift and the right side shift. And I could go on it. We could bring Corbin in and go on for hours in the esoteric details of how convoluted keyboards are. And they go all the way back to the 80s and a lot of design decisions that some guys at IBM made that we're all dealing with today. and it's lovely. And I love the fact that you guys are using that same syntax for your keylogging, because honestly, I've seen a lot of really crappy keyloggers in my day, and this is not one of them. So the fact that you're able to actually see in real time and to see like what specifically is being hit can sometimes make all the difference in the world on your engagement.
Oh, absolutely. And the nice part is that we also support all of the Ducky-Lang mappings inside of the keylogger as well. So if you know that you are targeting a French keyboard, you could just come over here and click French, and it will translate for you instead of you needing to copy it out and then map it to what the proper keys are, which makes things a whole lot easier.
And is that dynamic? Does that actually happen like right there in your browser?
It happens entirely in the browser. So,
oh my gosh. So it doesn't matter what you're capturing is in, because you're not actually capturing the text. You're capturing scan codes, essentially.
That's exactly correct. We capture the USB HID character scan codes, and we store those into the log, and we reinterpret those anytime it's displayed here in the UI, or if you come over here and request request full log. And I probably have some keys that were in there from before we started this test. Yeah, there we go. So all the stuff I was doing to make sure that this demo would actually work. But you can still come over here and change the language to, if I was typing in French, to translate those as well. Some of the things like the modifiers, those are still going to show up as English and basically just treat them as verbs that you'd look through, but it does make it so it's a whole lot easier to just come over here, copy something out, and paste it and do something useful with it, or even do regex parsing if you want it. Well, let's also come over how to flash the new cables, because that is an important part of getting the equipment upgraded. Let's swap over onto the webcam. So here is our newest generation flasher. It supports both the USB Type A and USB Type C interfaces. This back port right here is where you plug into, so you guys can read it, plug it into PC. And then you have down here where you can plug in one of your cables in order to program it. So what we'll do right here is just plug into the OMG side with one of our cables here. And then we are going to run our little Python utility. It will detect any of the programmers or other serial devices that you have on the computer in order to sanity check, making sure that you're doing what you want to and not accidentally bricking the wrong device. So we'll just come over here, and we have added a few new options. You can obviously upgrade your. I did not change back to my scene here. Whoops. You can obviously apply a firmware upgrade, which is what most people are going to want to use. But we've also added the ability to erase any of the stored payloads, key logs, any of your sensitive information with a single click. And as you see here, this process is very quick. We're done, and all information for previous payloads, logs, wireless networks that you're connected to, even the settings that you chose are all gone. And then if you wanted to reflash in order to get onto the new firmware, we'll just come over here and press 1 for flash new firmware. We will tell it to be an access point and call it security test lightning, because that one's my favorite. And type in a password there. And now we'll go through flash and get ready to use. As soon as this process is completed, all you'll need to do is unplug the cable from the programmer and plug into another device, and you can start accessing the web UI and programming it. As you can see here, since I chose access point, we're going to be creating a wireless network using the cable where it serves as its own network, and you can connect to it via the IP address 192.168.4.1. So Now that that's done, we will come back over. Not that one. I guess I got my tabs all mixed up when I was swapping things around. Well, I mean, in any case, it's back to this same UI that you guys would be used to in here, and then could write the payloads or run the keylogs.
Nice. Thanks, Kalani. That's the fact that the initial step of the cables requires you to just run a Python script seems intimidating to a lot of people at first, but it's really just that easy. You just run it, you select the Wi-Fi that you want, you hit enter, you wait a minute, and then you connect up into it. Somebody in chat was asking about whether there's like an API to connect to the plug. The plug uses the exact same firmware that all of the OMG cables use. And this web interface you're seeing, it's a JavaScript UI, and it's all talking to what we call the backend, the actual cable itself. There's like a web server on the cable. It's talking over a web socket. So you don't have to use the JavaScript web UI. You can automate via Python. Wasabi actually made a Python script that kind of gives you an idea of how to interface with it. And yeah, there's a lot more that you can do. There are a lot of advanced use cases here as well. One cool thing that Kalani kind of showed on his screen is that we not only allow the ability to do a factory reset, which is kind of the equivalent of a self-destruct, but if you don't want to actually boot up the cable and run it, you can just clear it there, which clears out the ability to get your payloads, get keylogs, get Wi-Fi config info, which is the other purpose of the self-destruct as well. If it's in field and you don't have access to it, you just run it and all of that data is gone, or you can have it autonomously do it if it detects it's out of bounds. That backup utility that was also in there allows you to create basically a full forensic capture of a cable you have in your possession, so that you can audit yourself. You can look at the contents of that, just open it in a hex editor, run strings against it, and validate that it's actually being wiped and what is or isn't on there. Or if you're blue team, just go get yourself a OMG Cable programmer to have on handy if you happen to run into an OMG Cable and you want to do forensics on it. There are some interesting things that we have put into it that make blue team's job more interesting. So if you were to open this cable and do chip off forensics, it would know and it would wipe itself. So the proper way to do forensics is with you don't even have to open the cable, you just plug it into a programmer and dump it with our backup utility.
Wow. So, MG, I have to say, you've definitely made the jobs of blue teams more interesting. Can you tell me, if I am on the blue team today, how would I go about detecting malicious cables if I was suspicious of them?
Yes, that's a great topic. So the OMG Cable is currently in some of the Blue Team Village workshops right now, doing APT emulation and detections and stuff like that. There's a couple different layers. So what I'm talking about in terms of the forensics, that's post-event analysis where you're, okay, something bad happened, but if you want to detect it as it's happening or, just before, there's a couple things that come into play here. Now, first of all, the easy ones are going to be the VID and the PID, vendor ID, product ID. All USB devices, like keyboards and such, come with one of those by default. And, as such, so does the cable. Now, you can detect those. You can detect foreign ones, but there's always a but, right? The VID and the PID can be defined inside of a payload, just like any of the other Ducky script capable devices that Hack5 sells. So if you want,
you can make it so that your OMG Cable shows up as a Logitech K102 keyboard, or if you want, you can make it show up as an Apple aluminum keyboard, or pick whatever vendor and product under the sun that you wish to mimic, or even just show up as generic HID device and be recognized by all operating systems.
It gets even more than that. We can also do the manufacturer ID, the displayable strings, the serial number of the device. So if you did want to clone something that is on someone's system, you could just come right over here, get a picture of the bottom of the keyboard in order to find out what its serial number was, and then just do a little prep work.
And so how do you specify that in the Ducky script when you're doing your payload for the device, when you're about to go into your deployment? You've done your reconnaissance, and you're like, yeah, I know that this bank, which is the right bank, I'm not going to hack the wrong bank, thank you, Jason Street, has standardized on Logitech K102 keyboards, and it turns out that the whitelisted one over at the till has a serial number of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Well, what we have right here inside of help, in order to make it very simple for people, is these commands for vid, pid, man, pro, and sir, where what you've just described is an incorrect serial number. So you would just modify the sir tag in order to put the new number. Then when you press run, you're ready to go. No compiling, no transferring to device. It is instantaneous, ready to use.
That's worth mentioning that this syntax guide that Kalani's showing here, that's all built into the web UI. So you've always, basically when you're in the field and using it, you always have the syntax guide ready for quick reference. And we're going in some directions that further help you understand the syntax and building payloads on the fly with some upcoming firmware that we're playing around with right now. I don't know if you have that handy, Kalani, do you?
Yep, I have it up right here. So this is our next generation UI that we're working on, V2.5 or maybe V3, whatever the number turns out to be. And we have done a lot of improvements to both accessibility as well as discoverability here. Now everything has a little help button here so that you can display the full labels of any text. You don't need to learn what the icons mean. And the documentation is right here incorporated into the payload editor, where if you did want to change that serial number, you just click right here on serial and then on this text, and it automatically populates into your payload as the next line that you would be going in and editing. Then you can do your vid and pid that we just talked about, and then we'll do a basic payload of let's go with that. Let's give us a string, enter, string, enter, and then we'll do, UIR, notepad, and then here you have a hello world instantly accessible where it'll run inside of a notepad on their computer using whatever the vid, pid, and serial number that needs to show up in those logs. So all around, it makes this whole process a whole lot easier because you don't need to go into a submenu, scroll around, copy something out.
I just love the idea of
ready.
having all of that right there accessible, the quick reference. And, that's how I code. Any language, even languages that I've been coding for years, I'm sitting there with a book by my side, or I've got, the man pages or manual or whatever have you in another tab, and not having to switch back and forth and being able to copy example code and modify it. That's how we all code, right? That's wonderful.
Well, that may be how we used to code, but I have something else right here. Here we have a keylog that I've already went in and typed. You guys have seen this one earlier. But I have this nice little button here, and actually I realized this text is a little small on here. So we have this convert keylog to payload button. If you click this, it takes whatever you typed and whatever you did in order to make this happen on the computer, and then builds a full Ducky script payload ready to use, ready to run.
No way. Wait, did it even get the capitalization?
Yeah.
So go back to the key. I'm sorry. I'm just really geeking out.
So
Okay,
right
hang
here,
on.
right
So
shift.
let's do E. Yeah, and then right shift and the T. What is this? Is a test. Okay. And so and then you string this is a test with the capital T, because Ducky script actually interprets that for you. And we don't specify whether it's the left or right super key or GUI key or Windows key. But that is ridiculous. And is it doing that in JavaScript with the what's in the keylog, or is it taking a look at the scan codes? Dude, how is that working? I love this.
That happens entirely in JavaScript in the browser by looking at the interpreted keylog. We then do some regex parsing in order to just see how that maps, to find out the stuff like these tags that have like your start tag and end tag, which is why that little slash is there, and then uses that to reconstruct how the payload needs to look.
Dude, that is incredible. And that is the same syntax that we're using on the Keystroke. And is that all happening in browser?
It's all in browser.
So even the regex?
Yes.
Of course. Yeah.
All of what we're doing is leveraging your phone or your computer's processing power to help the cable do a whole lot more, because you have all of
this is awesome.
This is incredible.
So just to remind people in the stream, this is upcoming firmware that I think would augment the plug really well, but will work on all of the OMG products. And I'm really happy that we behind the scenes, Kalani and I, Claudia's been very excited to show this to Darren, and I'm so happy that it's literally happening for the first time right now.
Dude, you can already see the gears turning in my head, especially as kind of what's coming down the pipe for some of the other Hack 5 gadgets, and I am just astounded by this. Yeah, hats off, because that is just so wicked and so usable. I love how toggleable and how it's just sleek.
There's more to it than just what's actually functional. It's quite amazing. I am by no means a UI person in any way, shape, or form. I do some of the back-end things here and there, tooling. But watching the UI team that we have develop this, it's absolutely astounding. Getting reports back from users and reporting when they report bugs, they get immediately put into action, and then once that action is being worked on, how will it be usable? Is there connectivity issues? What happens if the cable gets unplugged or there's communication issues? There's things in development like a queuing system. I don't know if that's a spoiler, but there's a whole system in case someone messes up something, because now if someone needs to replay and they're in their browser and they're not communicating, now there's a queue so you can get all the commands in order instead of just dropping out silently. And to make it even more amazing, the UI teams actually reduced the size dramatically of the web firmware component from what it used to be. So the version 2 is small. The 2.5 version 3, whatever we're going to call this, is even smaller, and it has even more functionality. It's absolutely astounding to watch how they do this.
Talk about astounding. I mean, this is the kind of stuff where it's like, we landed on the moon with a calculator. Like the fact that you're able to take such a nimble chip, a chip that there's not a whole lot of chips on the market that you can even fit into the boot of a USB-C plug. And it's not a powerhouse by any stretch of the imagination, but that doesn't matter when at the end of the day, you don't care how many megahertz it has. You care what's the functionality it gives you, and the fact that you're even able to, inject and keylog. And it's not like it's a, quad core ARM or anything, doing things in user space. Like there's like the logic that is involved in actually eking out those keystrokes is just absolutely incredible. And then you throw on top of that this web UI. I'm just floored. I'm honestly floored, guys. That's amazing.
Awesome. And you know what? That queuing system that Wasabi was talking about right there connects to another thing. It's been in motion. And you know what? Before I even switch to that, what you were talking about in terms of the optimizations and the edge cutting, like all the just everything you were just talking about. The keylogger is another topic. Like we could probably talk about that for like 3 solid hours just to describe how it does what it does. But the vast majority of people I described the basic technique to said that will not work. That's not how USB works. And I'm like, I know. Redacted, who's not on the stream, it took me a couple days of talking to him, and eventually he's like, okay, fine, let me try it. It took them quite a while to pull off, but like we actually pulled off keylogging in a way that nobody's doing. And it's really cool. And that alone is worth its own multi-hour discussion to describe how we do that. But the queuing system, that points to this C2 project we're working on. I don't know like the entire final form, but I would like to, let Wasabi talk a little bit about like what that's going to look like. The goal here, though, is to integrate with the Hack5 Cloud C2 system, which is you know what, Darren, you should probably explain exactly what that is before we jump into it.
Cloud C2 is our answer to the constant question when, now we're in the 7th generation of our little Wi-Fi pineapple, where us as, very hacker-minded, systems administrator focused, we're like loving sitting in the terminal with remote reverse shells and port forwarding and all of this SSH gymnastics to do like file systems like over SSHFS and being able to get remote access into the web UI of the Wi-Fi Pineapple. And while the Wi-Fi Pineapple's web interface in of itself is very user-friendly, when you deploy it remotely at a client site and then you want to be able to manage it from afar, unless you're good with everything that I just described, you're probably not going to have the greatest user experience. And so we looked at, hey, how do we make that an even better solution? So we came up with this system called Cloud C2 that is hosted on your own hardware. It's not a SaaS product. It's not something where you give your bits to us. We don't want your bits. We don't want the liability. And we just don't want your bits. Keep them to yourself. But in any event, there's the Cloud C2 is a application that you can run on your own servers. And it's got a web interface where you can log in and add not just your Wi-Fi Pineapple, but any of your Hack5 gear. So if you've planted land turtles and packet squirrels and screen crabs and key crocs where you can watch the key, the key logging interactively or live, it's that ability to have that kind of insight into this network from afar, from anywhere. And we've made it ridiculously easy to provision and get set up with those. And it's been, and at the same time, if you want to just get into the terminal on your device, you just click on your device, hit terminal, and then you web shell right there. You don't even, no SSH necessary. It's all right there in your browser. And that's, a free community edition for anybody to go right now, c2.hack5.org. and get and connect with, I would say outside of maybe 2 devices, works on all of our Hack5 gear. And even then, we'll soon work with all of our Hack5 gear. And as we work even tighter with MG's team, they immediately expressed a lot of interest in getting tied in with that system because it's already built this infrastructure for remote managing implants, for exfiltrating loot, for doing live attacks, for getting recon live, and for orchestrating and managing all sorts of attacks. So when you hit me up with that, I was just like, dude, your chip. And I keep telling you, like, you're using a Dorito, and you're like, well, I'm actually doing some crazy stuff with like logic analyzers, and I think I could. And I'm like, okay, and then MG does it, and so I am very excited to see the integration of Cloud C2, so that everybody that goes and gets an MG cable or an OMG cable, in fact, I'm just really hopeful that people will get introduced to that ecosystem and see the tremendous value. And it's also a really fun learning experience too, setting up those servers.
That's for sure. And it's not done yet. It's been a long journey to build the C2, not because the system is particularly complicated, but if you're building a command and control system, you want it to run functionally. And part of that process has been many iterations going from one method to another, looking at use cases. It's a very interesting world being in something that's so small, because most of the time C2 is just taking components together, putting some encryption over it, and just sending the data over, a JSON blob or something like that. With the cable, you have to be a little more selective because there's not a lot of wiggle room and there's not a lot of resources that you can just use. So it's currently in progress, but some of the cool things that the C2 will allow is to relay to any, we're designing it with the new UI, the 2 2.53 UI as well. So if you want to use Hack5C2, it will be compatible and you can use it. But you can also just use the UI on its own and connect to the cables. And with that, the C2 is actually designed to support multiple cables, each with their own encryption. So if you needed to burn a cable and you're not sure you can trust the keys, you're not burning the whole C2 system, you're burning individual components. And once it's released, this will address one of the common, it's not a big complaint, but one of the common complaints where people can find the cable by using the port. So this will remove the port from functioning and allow people to have essentially a stealthy cable that's plugged in, or the plug, and just have it running in an environment where it responds to things like pings, but you can't see the WebSocket port anymore. And there's no web server running, so nobody can initiate commands like an automatic self-destruct. So it is exciting, and we're designing it in such a way that the cable doesn't need to have a big queue. There's a lot of work that's gone to the firmware in the past with redacted efforts, and it's amazing to see the progress. I just wanted to shout out to Redacted because the team that we have here is absolutely astounding. It's, you're seeing the end product where there's a cable and there's a plug, and they're really small and they're really cool. But for example, Redacted came in and he's like, yeah, I can do that probably. And, a couple months later, he's like, yeah, it works. And he's so nonchalant about it. Like, yeah, of course it's totally possible. But it had taken a team of us previously almost a year to try to attempt it. And he's not alone. There's a lot of us here where it's just a very humbling experience to work with all these people who are just trying to make a better product. And that's what you're getting at the end, is something that's really functional, because we all care about it. We all care about it. Like on my desk, I too have one of the cables, always around, because it's just such an interesting tool. And, as a developer for it, you want to use those things. And that's why C2 is so important to me, is because I want to be able to use these, not in an actual mission, but, be able to use it as something where I've improved the product, where someone can have a benefit from it, from the common complaints and asks in the Slack.
What you just described right there is probably the best kind of symbolic representation of what V2 firmware is. Like V1 was like the minimum viable product. Let's get it out as like, it was basically like 2 or 3 people at the time working on this. And, the team has certainly expanded. We've had more time and just polishing stuff. So one anecdotal example here was the persistent keylogging function. So, we want to store these in Flash, right? But Flash has a finite amount of write cycles before it starts to die, right? And Redacted has, the last piece of hardware he was professionally working on was body cameras for police, right? So he's bringing that level of like, it must work to this. So his very first like proof of concept storage was like, oh, well, this will probably, statistically fry 1 block of Flash in 12 hours. I'm like, oh, okay, good enough for a proof of concept. And then, a couple days later, it comes back, okay, we're at like 12 weeks. I'm like, probably good enough. People aren't going to write for a solid, 24 hours a day and, hit that level. He's like, I'm not done yet. And then I think the end result was 50 years of continuous use before we hit a theoretical block failure on the Flash. And I'm like, dude, I don't think this USB standard is going to be around in 50 years, but that is awesome. Yeah, it's been really cool watching how much more we can push things and optimize things. Just the concept of getting wireless working with USB payloads. So in our V1 firmware, we would turn off wireless when the USB payload was transmitting, because we have a single core in this chip, like one single core to do everything. So what we would do is turn that off to guarantee that USB was not interrupted. But with a lot of optimizations and other things like that, we now have wireless turned on with the USB payloads working, and there's just so much juggling and optimization. And I'm really proud of what we have collectively produced here, and it's amazing that we're still looking at it like, oh, we're just starting, we're not done yet, and there's just so much more polish we continue to add. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I mean, with the persistent Wi-Fi, that was really a big door that we opened that now allow us to offload so many of these tasks into the web browser and allow for us to do things like the keylog to payload conversion, or some of the other stuff that we're looking into, like conditional payload execution, where instead of just saying, hey, if I'm on this particular network, run this particular branch of code, we could say, here's a boot payload and run these 4 different payloads depending on which network you're connected to. I mean, it lets us do so much more because we're able to use the power and capabilities of other devices as well.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah, it's awesome.
definitely
We have
where there's room for collaboration. As we
Yes.
as we're definitely in a place with Ducky Script where conditions and logic that aren't necessarily bash are starting to become a thing in our developments without and that's pretty much all I can say right there. But for sure, I feel you on that one. And there's been a lot of places where we've done things to that effect thus far, be it an if present or a wait until. And I'm very excited to see this evolve. And it's really rewarding to see it evolve because of the usage and because of the feedback from the community saying like, hey, I deployed this and, it would have been really great if it did this and this, or, and so much more so excited to hear the feedback when it's like, we were on the stream last night talking about this housing for the Wi-Fi Pineapple Mark V called the Ominous Box. That was basically just like a enclosure replacement that allowed you to plug it into a wall socket and have it look like a air sensor, some sort of like air quality monitor. And we got word that that a client had, a firm had, pen test firm or such, had installed it at a client site and forgotten about it, and it's still there 5 years later, and they only found out because it was, the logs filled. So just the idea of what's possible with Cloud C2 with a keylogging OMG cable and the Ducky Script additions where you can live inject into your target, it's kind of incredible, the possibilities. We've really come a long way, and a lot of that is really tied to just the feedback that we get. So I love that kind of, I'm sad that we're not in person at DEF CON, because that's where people come up to us and they're like, hey, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but by the way, one of your things is in a place and I can't even repeat half the stuff. And I'm always like, cool, I'm glad we're the good guys.
That is definitely a thing. Like, I was working with somebody in a place I'm not going to be able to say, but they're plugging this into a thing that's not a real USB port. Like, can we make it work? I'm like, let's figure it out. And there's a lot of interesting edge cases. The more people tell us about their use case, the more we can start to build that in and just increase the potential for them to use it for their needs, whatever it may be. And what you were mentioning. Hack 5 and the OMG stuff has just continued to just get more and more integrated, and that's been a lot of fun over the last couple of years, Darren. So thank you for that. And I'm just trying to think forward, like what is it going to be like in a year or two from now? Like it's just merging and merging. So it's really cool to see, and it's been super rewarding.
Yeah, and I mean, another great thing to mention here is that this isn't just keyboard emulation. This is USB human input device emulation. This is keyboards, this is mice, this is game controllers, this is biometric devices, this is printers, this is the little USB display adapters. It's so many things because of the fact that they all talk the same language. And well, here, I'll swap back over onto here for a second. And
this year's DEF CON badge.
Yes, it's this year's DEF CON badge. And one of the things that we can go in and do right here is we can capture all of the human input device traffic as well in order to let you store and analyze and figure out if there's something that is interesting that you want to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said. I see a lot of people before COVID and everything, when you met up with someone at a conference, they're like, yeah, these tools can be just done with, you know, a little basic Arduino where you can just write a string and it'll replay it every time you plug it in. It's perfect. And the challenge with that is there's nothing wrong with a tool like that. What I've come to realize working on these projects is for people who use these and who need these, it's not about the ability to do it one time. It's ability to do rapid prototyping and development in a professional setting where you don't have the time to spend reflashing and redoing things. And that's where a lot of the focus has been for the past year with these cables, is that we don't want people to have to reflash, because every time you reflash, you're down and you cannot use a product to its full potential. So that's where a lot of this development is going, is where you can do that rapid prototyping. And I'm trying not to do any spoilers, but we actually do use the cable for research. I mean, there are some videos on Twitter, but we actually have some research that may come out in a bit that is actually using the cables as the development platform to do the research. And so it's really cool to see how it's actually used in person as someone who actually uses it and develops it.
And I mean, one of the other...
You're muted, Darren. But I wanted to mention in terms of that, you know, we can do it on Arduino thing. And after the last, I don't know what, 3 years of learning how to prototype hardware and eventually bring that into production, like I look at everything in the Hack5 catalog is like, how is it so cheap? Like it is a ridiculous value to pick them up for what they are and just use them. Like my day job is Red Team, right? We got a ton of Hack5 stuff we bought and it's just like you don't have time to sit there and build an Arduino that like kind of sometimes works. It's giant and looks ugly. It's like, no, it's done, it's polished, it's ready to go. Just buy it and use it.
Well, there's two elements to that, and that's it's not to discount any of the learning that you can, achieve and the experience of putting together something with an Arduino or a Raspberry Pi or whatever have you, if you're trying to do a one-off for yourself. But the two elements that really draw the major distinction between there is the manufacturability, and that's really kind of a back house kind of thing. But it plays in a very important role, as MG can attest to, in the ability to actually get these things down to kind of the fit and finish that you really want. And then on the other hand, it has to be the usability. And that's what we've learned, going all the way back to the USB Switchblade in 2006, I want to say. So 15 years ago, learning that, what makes it usable is the fact that well, actually, then that was even before Ducky Script. Those were just batch files. The barrier to entry was low enough that anybody could do it, and the prototyping was fast enough that it was just like, plug it in, copy a file, eject the drive, plug it in again. Like, what do you think the USB Rubber Ducky got its kind of usability language from? It was some of those original hacks, and it's just gotten more and more refined. And so this is just another element of that, and it just warms my heart to see how like we're drawing on each other here, and it's kind of amazing.
The hardware community for developing professional tools is really amazing. And for those of you who don't know, it's a fairly small community. There's only a few people. Like Hack5 is the orb, like the planet with which everything revolves, but it's a very small community of people. And it's interesting to see. Before I was involved with this, I thought, okay, yeah, it's fairly cheap, but there's actually a lot of R&D that goes into this. And aside from MG's, I joke aside with the perfection, there's a lot of R&D, and none of us do this full time, not even close. All of it is just a passion about building better tools. And so we all have day jobs, and as much as we wish we could, there's a lot of, almost all the money goes back into developing that new version for people. And it's really interesting. And I can't really speak to half of it. It's just something that really opened my eyes when I saw it firsthand, because you don't really see that when you're just buying a tool.
It's very true. And I would say that if you asked my wife if I do this full time, she'd probably agree. But in terms of the manufacturability, that was like one of the first lessons I learned. Like the very first batch of cables, I think it was a 40% failure rate. Like that I threw away 40% of that batch, and I have continued to, tune that knob, and it's a lot of work to do to, get a little bit better. But it's not like you produce 1,000 of them and 1,000 come out. It's like, no, it's still a continual race to, see how much better it can be. And it never really ends there. I remember when I first assembled the batch for DEF CON in 2019, that was all hand done. Even then, like half of them were failing because these are really tiny parts, right? So, I figured, I'm gonna hand it to like the professional manufacturers, right? 60% better. Yeah, it's like, whoa, what was this? You're supposed to, you're the pros. And it's like, no, this is not at all. And then walked straight into the chip shortage. Like we launched the OMG cable, and like 3 months later, COVID happened and this chip shortage happened. And Darren and I are both dealing with that. It's an intense time to be in hardware at all right now.
Yeah, but it's also an intensely fun, place to be. And speaking to, the some of those elements, whether it's backstage with manufacturability or front stage with, the usability, there's so many hacks that go into this that are really rewarding. And one of the reasons that we're all doing this is because we love to automate things and optimize things and find new and novel ways to do things. And so some of the coolest hacks I've actually seen are ones that you'll never see, but you benefit from. Because, for instance, when MG is programming these and testing these in his living room with his kids, of course, he's automated. That is not him in like a netbook, plugging one in at a time. He's got an entire array. And of course, it's got these, it's got a Raspberry Pi on the other end that's like speaking to all of them. And it's like 16 being programmed and tested all at once. And there's just different LEDs turning on to let him know what's going on. And all of that is a wonderful hack and automation in of itself, but just for the manufacturing and testing of the stuff. So, it's a continual opportunity to learn and grow, and that's what has been my experience. And it's really cool to see just all the ways that you can, like, I don't know. I also get really excited about reading things like the CCITT Blue Book and HID specifications and manuals. So maybe I'm the weird one in the room, but I do absolutely love all of the opportunities to hack like logistics.
There's
you're
so
not the
much
weird
of
one in
that.
this room.
I've learned so much. Go ahead, Kalani.
Oh, I said you're not the weird one in this room.
Yeah, right. I mean, one of these days we should do a stream where we're definitely going to need some beers for this or something, but we could go on forever about stupid decisions that were made in the 1980s that relate to AT keyboards that we now enjoy dealing with in the modern era with HID.
Yes. Oh my God. I have honestly, me personally, and I'm sure everybody on the team, I've learned so much just doing this. And you're right about the just the hardware testing. Like this whole rig that itself has become a product. Like there's only a few people who use it, but it has iterated, I don't know, 20, 30 different times in the way it works. Like the physical design of it. Do I have? Yeah, I've got one of them. This thing's already old. I only use that for like a month. This is just little testing rig, right? Plug cables in. Anyway, I have to send these, the same ones I'm using in my living room. I also send off to the factory. That's also they don't understand like the full complexity of the cables. They're assembling them and they need to test to make sure they work. And there's a whole process of like, well, how can it fail in terms of the usage in the factory? And, how can it autonomously just recover? Because I can't be there to fix these things. There's just so much cool like hacks that have to be applied to make this stuff work. And yeah, I think this might be a good time to jump into Q&A. So,
well, dude, we've got
here
some
I have
really good
one
questions lined up. Why don't you bold the ones that you like, and we can just go ahead and jump right into them, because I know we were just geeking out about how they're manufactured, and that was actually a question from someone whose name is in Cyrillic, so I'm not going to attempt, but thank you. And yeah, it's another one we got was from Cody Go 88, who says, can I use OMG cables for iOS, Androids, Symbians, but also shout out to Symbian, etc.
So yeah, that's a good question. I didn't even mention this. So with the Type C cables, the C to Lightning, C to C, the Type C end, the hot end, can be plugged into Type C mobile devices. And so let's see. I think a lot of the new iPads have Type C. Lots of Androids have Type C. And I'm actually working right now with Int80 dual core on some mobile payloads. So I won't spoil exactly what they are, but it's a kind of a different world there because things are a little bit different. We're still navigating around and doing things with a keyboard, but we'll look. You should keep your eyes out for when that video comes out with Int80 and myself.
And here, even just something else. I use these in order to set up my devices myself. And when I got my new iPad, I plugged my cable right into it and had a payload set up in order to automatically sign into my iCloud, automatically sign into my Google accounts, and restore the backups and get it ready to use, just because I don't want to sit around spending an hour waiting on that, and I can leave it to do its thing.
Yeah. Another question here was, does it support Hebrew? Does it, Kalani? Do we have that yet?
Not yet, but that is one of the languages that I was looking at now that we have the non-Latin character set supported.
Yep. So
Another
yeah,
wonderful
if you want it.
And this is one where I have made some recommendations for future career choices if you're just getting into InfoSec. Somebody, David Shook here asks, can I install ransomware? Good to see the Black Hats making an appearance in the chat. I hear it's a very lucrative market. Yeah, here's the thing. It's a pencil. You can run with it, or you can write with it. So anything that you can do sitting at a computer, typing, you can do it with one of these automated very fast. That's not me encouraging you to do ransomware. That's me telling you it can fix printers, which is literally how the USB rubber ducky came into existence, where I, as a systems administrator, tired of running the same netsh commands over and over, decided to automate them. And so whether it's ransomware or installing patches on air-gapped machines offline, because you can just hand a device to a bunch of junior engineers and say, hey, go plug this into all of those computers, it's whatever you fancy. We also have another question here from 8-Bit Oni, who says, I'm just curious, though, are these cables bi-directional? If not, will they be in the future? MG, you want to speak to that?
Yeah. So like all of these cables, they work just like a standard USB 2.0 cable. So yeah, you plug them in, and you can charge your phone between the laptop and the phone if that's what it is, or a keyboard, whatever it may be, and you're transferring data. The only time that changes is during a payload. So when you run a payload, it interrupts the line, takes it over, which if you think about that, that also means that the host does not see the implant in there until you run the payload. So it's basically completely stealth in that sense. But that's there's one exception there. The C to C directional cable. That was a fun little hack to allow people to get their hands on a C to C cable that is good for, like demos, good for hacker deployed, where, the hackers physically doing deployments versus, getting lost in some of these cables and then they pick it up and use it. That's the fun little hack where there is a hot end and a not hot end. The hot end, you plug it into the host, and the not hot end into a device. It works just like a standard cable. Data's moving, everything. And then you can unplug that and use the hot end and plug it directly into a mobile device. And then you can deploy Ducky script against mobile devices. That's the one exception.
Just want to say shout out to the guy who used the cables on a CTF to solve challenges. That's a really cool use case.
Nice. I didn't see that. Somebody's asking, can the firmware be flashed to V1? I don't know why you would want to do that. The V2 is so much better at this point. But yeah, I mean, all of the stuff can technically run the V1. If it's anything besides like a Type A to whatever cable, it's not going to be as well supported. Like the keylogger isn't in V1. There's just so many more optimizations in the V2 stuff right now. So yeah, you're not going to hurt it if you flash V1.
And I think they might have been asking a slightly different question here, and that is that you can flash the V2 firmware to the original hardware, including the prototypes from the first DEF CON where these were sold. Every device can run this latest firmware.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Is yeah, the goal with V2 is to unify everything. For a very brief period of time, when we were kind of doing early access on the keylogger, there was like the keylogger firmware. Then there was the non-keylogger firmware, and that worked for development. But turns out if you make cables that look exactly like another cable, you also create an interesting problem, which is all of your cable variants also look identical to each other, and you've created a problem for an end user who's got both cables. It's like, well, which one's which, right? So that user experience was not the greatest, and we devised a way for the firmware itself to auto detect which cable's which. You just flash the V2 firmware down to whatever OMG device you have, and it figures it out for you. Let's see. There was another one. Somebody's asking if there are any books for Ducky script. Darren, I think you might have a good answer.
There is. There's the USB rubber ducky field guide, and there's actually a series of like physical books for a lot of the Hack 5 gear. And I guess I'll just let you know right now. One, docs.hack5.org is always your best place to go, because as firmware changes and as the scripting language evolves, that's where you can find the command reference for Ducky script, and you can find the documentation on the various products. And we're going to be making that, as well as some of the other short ebooks that go along with USB rubber ducky and keystroke injection in general, free ebooks this week. So stay tuned to hack5.org for that. That'll be just a nice little giveaway to you if you're the ebook kind, as I stare longingly at my Kindle.
There's somebody was mentioning something about the cable detector, right? The malicious cable detector, and I don't think I have one over here, but anyway,
I've got one right here.
Nice.
So this is what the malicious cable detector looks like.
No, well, you have a programmer in your hands.
Oh, whoops,
but it looks
I'm
very
sorry.
similar.
I have vision problems, so I thought I was grabbing the wrong one. Whoops. These ones look a lot alike. Here we go. This is the malicious cable detector. Sorry about that.
Ooh, I found one. So let me put it on camera real quick. So basically, let's see. Plug it in real quick. Ooh, is it going to focus?
You're in focus.
So you're going to see little horns, right? Basically what happens is this is for Type A cable. So if you've got a Type A cable that you don't know if there's something inside of it that shouldn't be there, I made this for that purpose. There are, I tested this against every type of malicious cable I could find when I designed it, and it flags every single one of them. It also happens to block data. It's moddable if you want to get into it, if you like playing around with Arduino IDE and stuff like that. There's I think one person right now actively looking into this. But yeah, it's a very, very simple device. You plug it in, you'll just look for a light. If there's a light, there's signs of life.
And if there's a flashing light, then there's a sign of current data passing across it, which I guess that's the way just...
I'm going to just derail the subject for 1 second, but I think this is one of the coolest things about working on this project that most people don't know. But the OMG cables are probably some of the most focused on accessibility that of any red team tools out there. There's a lot of focus, and it's really amazing to see, because we don't really think about it that black text on a green text on a black terminal, or white text on a black terminal, it's not really accessible. And the UI and the tools have been built from the ground up, or rebuilt, I should say, to be accessible for people who have either vision disabilities or anything like that, where it's usable in a way that makes it so it's still functional for pretty much everyone, which is just really cool to me.
Yeah, that's been something that I've pushed really hard on, because I use tools like voiceover and voice control to be able to tell what's going on. I have braille devices because, my vision is not all that great. And because of that, I want these to be tools that I'm able to use and use easily, regardless of whatever device I'm on.
What happens when you plug a malicious cable detector into a malicious cable detector? Well, since there are forms of life, power draw, etc., on one of these, they will flag each other. There was let's see, there was something else here. Where should I go for more information about the malicious cable detector? So all of the OMG stuff is on the Hack5 store. A quick shortcut I have is o.mg.lol, or I think it's
hack5.org/OMG.
Yeah, you take your pick. All of the OMG kit is there. There's what is the other one? Demon Seed. It's a very, very, very primitive DIY malicious cable concept. It's a very long journey if you want to take it, but it's meant for people who really want to play around, and if you're playing around with like Arduino IDE and stuff like that. It does not at all line up with what the end result of an OMG cable is. I mean, there's no wireless or anything like that. It's just very, very fun, primitive approach to making cables, because there are more than one way. What else?
I like the question that was, what is your, what has been some of your proudest obstacles you've overcome in recent development? And I wish that I could share some of the, and I'm speaking here for the Hack5 development team, but recently we've made some really amazing developments. I know one of Corbin in particular has not slept this week, not because of any crazy deadline or anything, but just because he's so excited for what he's doing. And I keep getting updates in our internal chat, looking at the, like videos and whatnot of like these major accomplishments. And I know I'm being very vague here because we're working on a new piece of hardware, but to see what was an idea that then became some silicon, that then became plugging it into a machine and having, oh my God, did that just happen? Is so profoundly rewarding. It's hard to really describe. And I know, on the software side, you do get that, when you hit F5 and it compiles without any warnings and you're like, yes, but there's something different about when you can hold it in your hand and say, I made you breathe. So I'm curious, actually, I bring this one up because I'm curious for your entire team, what that obstacle and moment has been. And thank you for the question, Anthony.
Who wants to take this one first? Because I don't know. There's so many. So I got to think about it for a bit.
I mean, the one that I did, I can't say I did this. This is again redacted, but the key logging capabilities was one of the coolest things, because I had met MG at DEF CON a couple years, and we were talking, and he's like, yeah, this idea is really cool. And I was like, I think I can help. I'm not sure. And I don't want to, I'll just try. And I was struggling. And it was not, it's not something that is easy. Everyone, as he had said it wasn't possible. Redacted got on it and started working on this. And then he's like, well, here's the stream. And he's showing this little video uploaded to our development chat. And it was like, wow, that just happened. And it's like, even though you were not a part of it, I was not a part of it making it happen. It was so cool seeing the team, seeing Redacted make something that was told impossible to actually exist. And sure, I'm doing horrible with my English right there, but it was just something so amazing to see that turned into reality.
That's one of the big things that came to mind is like, I remember when I described that to you, I'm like, look, we're going to use this pathway. We're going to use this internal wiring on the chip. We're going to then, process the data this way, this way, this way. And I think ultimately, probably 90% of that ended up being exactly how we ended up doing it. I just didn't physically possess the full skill set. And that's why it's cool pulling in all these other people who bring all of that to the table so we can think up these crazy things that just combine together. That was definitely a good one. Honestly, God, there's shrinking the hardware further. Like, I didn't know if that was going to be possible. Getting all this extra range out of the antenna. Now, I didn't. That wasn't me. Troy helped do this. Waveguide on Twitter helped optimize this because, man, RF is like black magic. It's its own complete thing. So people that specialize in that just bring their own skill set. Honestly, I would say the most thing I am proud of is finding all of these people, bringing them together, and watching the magic that just comes out of it, to be perfectly honest.
See, MG doesn't give himself enough credit, and that almost weekly in the development channel, it's hilarious chats. But it's almost weekly where he'll come in and be like, I have this idea. For example, when the O.MG Detector it became an idea. He's like, I think I can make this happen. And then, like an hour later, he's like wiring up this thing on a breadboard, and he's like, I think this will work. And then an hour after that, he's doing some basic, fabbing to do a prototype. And then he's like, yeah, it works now. And it's just almost weekly that things like that will happen. Like shrinking the cable size was one of those, like, I think this can happen, and then boom, it does. And it's really cool to see. And he calls himself the herder of the team, and that's not incorrect, but it is cool to see all the hardware stuff that he regularly does.
I appreciate it, man. I don't know. Anyone else have other things that they personally feel like has been a great challenge?
Oh, sure. I guess for me, one of the things that I really enjoy doing, outside of this project is gaming and trying to figure out what sort of weird things we can do with our products. So I think this was like back in November of last year, right when I just came on board. I was wanting to try to see about capturing the HID data off of a controller and using it to create a TAS, so a tool-assisted speedrun replay that you could use to just automate whatever you were doing and have the game play for you, just completing sections of the game. And that was one of the things that I was able to get working really early on before I even, was like had a good understanding of how deep USB head processing was. And now going in and trying to figure out more interesting things that we can do with other devices on the head table and seeing if there's a there.
Nice. Are you selling at DEF CON? OMG is not, but we got all our stuff on the Hack5 store. What do you think, Darren?
What do I think about
Do you have your own answer? The internet. The question was, are you selling at DEF CON? And
yeah,
I know you're not.
So virtually, virtually speaking, yeah, we're on the internet just like a lot of DEF CON, and we hope you'll come by and join us at hack5.org. And we really look forward to when we can have hugs in person in Vegas. And as soon as that is for us, we will be there. And for everybody that is there, we miss you. We hope you're safe and have a great time.
Yes. We I won't mention exactly what it is, but I'm working with Darren right now to make some special DEF CON things that'll go up on the store.
Stay tuned. It's going to be a fun weekend.
It's a hat.
Yes. It's a hat.
We're hatting the system.
Oh, a hack hat. So
Wow, so much great stuff in the chat. I'm really grateful for everybody showing up here as, we just update everybody and then be able to like shoot the breeze and get ideas. Part of what makes Hack 5 Gear and I'm sure and MG, malicious gadgets as well, what they are is the community feedback, the interaction. I mean, that's where the teams come from. That's where the ideas come from. That's where the refinement comes from. It's because of you guys and your constant, thirst for Technolust. And we're just so proud to be, and so honored to be the facilitators of that. So I know forums.hack5.org is one place, at least, where you can get involved with the community and, post your questions and post your ideas. And a lot of times we're like, oh, that would make a great payload. That would make a great construct for the way arming mode operates or whatever have you. Is there, MG, is there anywhere in particular we want to, as we wrap up the hour, let people know to get involved with the community, because I know you've got such a rich community.
yeah, definitely. So when you get one of the products, there's always a link in the setup directions that point back to our Slack server, basically. So you can jump in there, and we interface with everybody on that very routinely. Let's see, if you're just looking for updates and stuff, yeah, my Twitter _MG_ and Mischief Gadgets as a whole. It's what we're making the MG in OMG. So what is that? At Mischief Gadgets at Mischief Gadgets on Twitter. Sorry, brain is fried.
Awesome. And guys, let me tell you, it's a real pleasure to meet you. MG speaks so highly of you. I'm glad that we were able to put some faces together and have this opportunity to interact with the audience and give them some insights onto what's now available. And whoa, dude, just dropping new hardware like on a stream, like no NBD. Are there even any still available? As I refresh the page and realize that there are going to be I can count on my hand how many lucky people will be out there. So maybe we'll do another gift card at the end of the stream. There are just a few more quick questions I want to get to before we get out of here, but I do want to thank everybody for joining and for it's just great to meet you guys, and I love what you're doing. I can't wait to get all of us together to just kind of like cross some of those streams, as it were. Is there anything else that you guys want to add before we wrap up with these last few questions and potentially a gift card?
I think that covers everything we really wanted to hit on, and that was that was a good run through. I'm happy we did this. There's a lot of stuff we need to capture from this and turn it into like a proper like instructional video and get it up on the Hack 5 thing. Like, can you believe we are what, 2 years into the OMG existing in the world, and I still don't have like an unboxing and setup video.
Wow.
We will start making these things happen.
Well, let me throw this out to the couple hundred that we have here on the stream. As we're really enjoying the opportunity, as it's Hacker Prom week between Black Hat and DEF CON, and we wish we could be there. And this is what we typically do on a one-on-one basis, but to be able to just live stream, as we're all so used to now doing so many video calls, interact with you guys. This is something that you want to see more of. Would you like more live streams like this? Because there's a lot of stuff that we could update you on, get you involved with. There's always new stuff happening within the development that isn't your typical episodes of Glitch Tech and Redia and practical exploitation and ThreatWire and everything else. But I would love to hear the feedback on that. And as you let me know in chat, I'll go ahead and pitch the last couple of questions that we have here before we get out. So Lucky710 wants to know, MG, what is the Demon Seed refill kit? What does that do? Why is there a refill kit?
Because sometimes you want more cables. But basically, the full kit comes, programmer and all these other things. You're physically programming and soldering these things together, right? It comes with 2 cables worth of, implants and the little USB boots and all that stuff. In fact, kind of like this, right? If you want to make more, or sometimes you mess them up too, or whatever it may be. I just figured there were enough people asking, like, oh, can I get more without buying another programmer and stuff like that? I'm like, yeah, sure. Let me throw them in the bags for you. And I have, well, can't really see it. I have a mountain of those little baggies that these things come in, and so any excuse I have to get rid of some of those, I do. And the OMG plug actually also comes in one of those little tiny baggies for you dime collectors. You collect dimes.
Aficionados. Yes.
Yeah, coins. Yeah.
Shout out to MG's camera, which always manages to be out of focus right at the perfect opportunity. Like, here, look at this. Oh, no, never mind.
I do love it. I do. I mean, I
I'll
also
eventually
love
figure this camera out.
how we can just jump on a broadcasted meet, and honestly, the 80-20 rule is in full effect here. So the feedback is very welcome on the stream from everybody who clearly would like to see some more of these, and I hope that the quality is. I know it's not to your typical Hack 5 overproduction value standards, but the information is here, and you guys have shown up in force and stayed throughout, and I'm really grateful for that. The last 2 questions before we get going actually aren't even really questions, just kind of statements that I feel like highlighting because I think they warrant a lot of like what we do here. And that is, first off, Softbotch says, because of the USB rubber ducky, I learned how to bypass antivirus and obfuscate code. Hack5 and their tools have such a big impact on me. And it's truly heartwarming to see that because the barrier to entry on DuckyScript and it allowing you to do such rapid prototype is making it accessible. And then it's not just enough to do the party trick to get the free phone call from the payphone. You want to know how it worked. And so to see that it led to you like learning how to do obfuscation, things of that nature, is just fantastic. And that's what we strive to do. We strive to make better hackers. And that's just really exciting. So props to that.
I just want to. There's a big question that just popped up on the chat. And this is an MG question, but how do I just understand the SKUs for the OMG cables? And that one's important before we end the stream because if people have questions, that's a big.
Well, so on every cable page, there's a comparison table. If you just scroll in a tiny bit, I cannot currently share my screen, but anyway, there is a comparison table that just shows you everything there. So everything should be represented effectively by type A to whatever type A, whatever keylogger, C to lightning keylogger, C to C directional keylogger, and then they all fall in subsets of that. So it really comes down to what you want your cable to look like. So if it's a white USB A to USB C, a black USB A to USB C, a 2 meter micro cable. It's really because the whole point of the OMG thing is that it's not just any USB cable, it's your target's USB cable. You're trying to swap it out as the closest representation of what they already have. So that's that's why there's quite a bit of options there. It depends on what's your keyboard use. If it's a keylogger, is it a micro? Is it a C? Is it a lightning? I mean, you gotta pick your connectors there. And then of course there's the host side stuff, which is it a type A or is it a type C port? So I think that sums up most of that.
So yeah, just to make it easy, I mean, the main thing that you care about is, do you want a keylogger or do you want something that just runs payloads? Which then decides which, actually I should share my screen for this, which then decides which side you want to go into. If you want to go into cable or keylogger, you then have like what end it is, if it's an A or C. And then, so like right here, cable or keylogger, you have lightning to C. And then the stuff down here is what talks about what features are enabled by each device. For the most part, it's that the Type C cables are our newest, our best. They have the longest range. They have the most storage. They can run against smartphones by plugging in the C side. But aside from that, they're all pretty much the same, and it's a question of keylogger and payload, or just payload.
And of course, plug now.
There's some keylogger specific features, like that payload builder you were talking about requires keylogger. And there may be some stuff that the keylogger capable cables are able to start doing as we continue to develop the firmware. I don't know yet, but we're going to experiment more with that.
All right.
So if there's any remaining questions, I think we're good though.
Yeah, no, this has been a lot of fun. We will definitely be doing this again. I got to say, it's really rewarding spending some time with you guys, especially as we're used to doing this in person, and we hope to continue to do these. Thank you guys for showing up and showing off, and you guys for asking some great questions. So hack5.org/OMG for all of that stuff, especially O.MG.LOL. And with that, I just want to point out PCap Pirate's awesome comment in chat, which was, FYI, I made an OMG cable and a rubber ducky automate going into a particular CTF and solving a few challenges. You see, we never could have envisioned that. And it's so rewarding to see the novel ways that these devices are being used. I encourage you to find new and novel ways to use them. Let us know. I'm at Hack5Darren on Twitter. MG is at _MG_. And with that, is there anything else you want to add to this, MG?
I think we're good. That covers pretty much everything. This was a fun stream. Thanks all.
Okay, well, hey, you guys know how we wrap these things up, and that is to say, once again, trust your technolust. It's expecting you to say criminal instincts. You're not saying it.
It's weird because there's the Google auto switching, like who gets the screen. But yeah, normally going for the trust your criminal instincts.
I'm leaving it at that, dude. All right, cheers, guys.
See ya.